Greetings fight fans, नमस्कार and welcome to a brand new episode of the MMA Roundtable. मेरा नाम है वॉन सक्सेना और आज हम बात करने वाले हैं UFC 2633 के बारे में जो कि हमारे लिए होने वाला है संडे की सुबह. Joining me as always is Jiu-Jitsu Maestro, owner and founder of CrossTrain Fight Club, Siddharth Singh, MMA journalist, analyst and commentator Mr. Andrew Liu. Ki haal chal boys? How's it going?
Doing good, surviving the pandemic here.
Trying our best to survive the pandemic.
So we got this killer card coming up on Sunday. Israel Adesanya versus Marvin Vettori. We have two title fights. That's the first one, which is also a rematch. We have Brandon Moreno versus the champion Davison Figueiredo, and the return of the bad boy of the UFC, Nate Diaz, against the rising British star
Leon Edwards.
Leon Edwards.
Scott.
I'm gonna edit
Leon
that.
Scott, sorry.
Leon Edwards. All right. So let's start with the main event right away. Israel taking on Marvin Vettori. Now that first fight, it happened a while ago, so I thought Vettori did a pretty good job with his game plan in that. What are your thoughts on how it's gonna go down this time?
Yeah.
I rewatched the fight on Fight Pass a couple of weeks ago. I remember just when all of this was starting out, and for the first two rounds, it seemed that Israel pretty much had a beat on Marvin Vettori. He had his timing down, he had his rhythm down, and the way Israel, like the way he fights, right, is like he exits in angles, and Marvin could not catch him, didn't understand the technical aspects of how to deal with him there. Even in the final round, really, it wasn't as close as most people think it was. Like even in the final round, he took him down. Yeah, it was a great, like I think I clinched him, double jabbed his way into a clinch and then took him down, but held on to him, didn't really do any damage. Kind of very similar to what Jan Blachowicz did with him in the fifth round. Because the thing with Israel is anytime you give him, like you have to be chest to chest with him, right? The minute you give him this much space, hands come and push out, the legs come and push you out, and generally he pops back up. Because he doesn't have the mindset of what a jiu-jitsu guy would have. Case in point, Marvin's previous opponent, Kevin Holland. I watched that fight as well. Very similar in terms of like body style and length and all of that kind of shit, except that Kevin Holland is not as technical a striker as Israel is. Yeah. So the issue with Vettori is that like he needs to be able to take Adesanya down, one, and two, cause damage. If he can't cause damage, he's going to get lit up on the feet as well. It's at the second time around. But he's been through a couple of wars. The really good win that he had before this was Jack Hermanson, who I hold in very, very high regard. I think he's a very, very good fighter. And it was a very back and forth war. So if I had to really, truly predict who was going to win the fight, I would say put the money on Israel. Because he's the more refined striker. He's the more savvy striker. But there is a time which is ripe for upset as well, simply because of the mindset that Israel could be coming in after losing his 205 debut and championship fight. So, again, gun to my head, put money, I would say Israel should take the fight in the second to third round.
But do you guys feel that Jan kind of laid out the game plan that one with the strengths of Marvin Vettori can take against Israel, which is, engage as less as you can on the feet and then try to take the fight to the ground and then keep him there?
Yeah, with Vettori, he's not a striker. You can say he's a striker, but not at the level of Izzy at all. Mm-hmm. And he's been working a lot on his boxing, but there are different levels, man. Like Izzy's striking is so much higher. So you've got one guy who's like Vettori is so strong, physically so strong, but he's very flat-footed. He's always flat-footed, and while he's throwing punches, they mainly, stationary. He moves forward in a straight line, throwing punches, whereas Izzy is always creating angles, always mobile. And I think between the last fight and this fight, Izzy's also leveled up a lot. I think like the level of competition that they've each faced is also very different. I think what Izzy faced is just he's been facing killers one after the other, and he's been winning most of them. So that's one more thing. And then if you look at the game plan, if you look at the strategy, the only way, like Andrew touched upon, the way he can beat Izzy is by taking him down and doing damage on the ground. Now, Izzy obviously knows that. He knows, and you seen when he went to 205, he saw he got taken down. He saw what happens when someone bigger and stronger is on top. So he knows what he needs to be working on. So he's been training a lot with the guys from Atos, with Andre Calvao and Kenan Duarte and all those monsters, because he knows the only way he can lose is on the ground. So he's been working on, like Andrew said, he gets taken down, create some space, and get the fuck back up.
Yeah.
The key do not spend any time on your back.
No time. Down.
Sorry, but what Sid was saying, I've been watching all the promotional material that the Embedded and the Countdown show and stuff that the UFC has put out. I was surprised that Marvin Vettori, he trains out of King's MMA, which is Rafael Cordero's camp.
Yeah.
And I didn't see Rafael Cordero out there training his striking, who's like striking my.
Yeah, he was training at Gracie Baha, which is Romulo's gym. If you saw, he's wearing a Gracie Baha.
Yeah. Romulo Barra's gym.
He's training this. I don't know what's happening behind the scenes, but I didn't see that as well. Juan. Good. It's good you observed that because I saw it as well.
If you look at Marvin Vettori's record, just something to point out in terms of history, right? Like if you look at his record, not a lot, especially in the UFC, he doesn't really stop guys on the feet. He doesn't have that kind of like slick combination punching that like Izzy has. Izzy will throw, like he'll throw a left straight with a high kick coming off of it. He'll change stance, kick you in the leg, knee you in the body, maybe throw another jab, like weave, hit you with a right hook. He has a lot of different weapons to attack you with. Marvin has a few weapons, but he's not as mobile, and I don't think he has the kind of diversity to hurt people on the feet. So as I said, and as coach said as well, like you have to take the way to beat Izzy is you have to take him down and you have to stifle him, because he doesn't make mistakes. Look, when you get up to the highest level in MMA, it's very rare that you see like guys giving their backs. Very rarely do you see that happen nowadays. So a couple of weeks ago, because I'm crazy and I have nothing to do and my life is empty and meaningless, I sat through and watched all the exhibition fights from TUF, right? Like I sat down on Fight Pass and I was like, from TUF 1 all the way to TUF 28. Yeah, like 28 seasons of I avoid all the stupid drama. So just the fights in the exhibition bouts, the fights to get into the house. You'll notice that even 10 years ago, which is 2010, 2011, 2012, guys were still turning, giving their backs and just getting choked out left, right, and center, right? And we're talking about like at the level, at the time when GSP and all these guys were champions. So MMA is already relatively well established. These days, guys you don't see any of that kind of noob shit anymore. You don't see them make stupid mistakes. Therefore, guys like Izzy don't make stupid mistakes like that again. Very similar example is when when Jan Blachowicz fought Devin Clark. I don't know if you guys watched this fight. He basically took him down on the fence. Devin Clark popped up. Jan Blachowicz basically caught him in like a standing rear naked choke and submitted him there. He tried getting Izzy in the same thing. Izzy just immediately switched, turned, and pushed out. Because these guys already know the dangers there. All of these positions, all of these things have been trained. So I don't see Marvin submitting Izzy. He may get lucky, maybe rock him with a shot or something. MMA is so unpredictable. You can never predict the outcome of a fight. But straight up, I don't see him stopping Izzy with a sub. If he wins, it has to be a 5-round perfect workman-like decision.
Yeah, and I think what Izzy is really, really good at is down and up. It's so difficult to keep him down. You've seen him being taken down, but you'll see it more and more in this fight. I don't think Vettori can hold him down. Not like he did in the last fight. I don't think he's holding him down.
Yeah, I mean, coming back to what Sid was saying about the level of competition that both these guys have faced in their, maybe the last 5 fights, if we just look at. So for Vettori, he's taken on Kevin Holland, Jack Manson, Carl Robertson, and Andrew Sanchez, and Cesar Ferreira. Cesar Ferreira, the winner of TUF Brazil.
Brazil, yeah.
All tough guys. All really tough guys.
Yeah, but these are not your top.
They're not.
Yeah, guys. I mean, the level of competition that Izzy has been taking on is just, really up there.
It's escalation, right? It's a constant escalation of like tougher opponents.
And honestly, if you ask me, I think Robert Whittaker definitely should have been the guy to be taking on Izzy for this, but he wanted to wait till October. Izzy didn't want to wait till October. He wanted it now, and Marvin Vittori, here he comes. Maybe the first. Is he the first Italian challenger for the title?
Yeah, not challenger. I don't know.
I think so.
I'm thinking, wait.
Run that encyclopedia. It's running.
No, yeah. I think he's probably he's probably the first Italian challenger. Yes, you might be correct. Yeah.
And he aptly calls himself the Italian Dream also.
And it'll open up a huge market for the UFC if he wins. I mean, shit, Italy is a massive market for them, right? Like
growing really fast going.
Yeah, really fast.
Maybe you think he should have fought somebody like Cannonier or a Paulo Costa or someone who's...
That would have been a really good test, before you got that shot against Izzy. He needed to fight one of those big names before you stepped up. This could be like I said, the level of competition. He needed one more big name, before fighting.
Yeah, just one more big name. Maybe a Paulo Costa, Jared Cannonier. Exactly, those two names are perfect. Just one of those two guys. Maybe even a Kelvin Gastelum. Like shit. Yeah. If they had fought and he'd beaten them, I think then there's no question about who deserves it. But Robert Whittaker, people seem to forget that has only lost to Israel in the middleweight division. He hammered the living shit out of Kelvin Gastelum. Like, I mean, dude, the combos he was hitting him with, like Kelvin Gastelum. And the thing is, Kelvin Gastelum, very good fighter. No bones about that. But I think he's just not there at middleweight as yet. Like, he doesn't have the requisite skill set to keep up with top 5. Every time he's come up against a top 5 opponent, he's kind of come up short. Jack Hermanson got tapped. Izzy, close and fantastic fight, but got beat. Fought Chris Weidman, got submitted. So, I don't know if King's MMA really changed his striking around, or anything, because he has a couple of good weapons, but he doesn't seem to be progressing as much as, like a guy like Israel does. Like every fight you see Israel, he's like leveling up. I think he met like a very tough challenge in Blachowicz, who's also a superb kickboxer, very good kickboxer, and could like just negate his styling, like basically him getting styled on, right? But I don't know.
That is also the toughest. The weight class jump from middleweight to light heavyweight
it's the toughest.
Also the biggest in
yes,
3 pounds.
Let's see, 185 exactly, 185 to 205. That's it's a big jump, and few guys have been able to be successful that way. Anderson is one of them, but that was another generation of fighter.
Yeah, it's a completely different generation of fighters as well. And let's be real, Anderson didn't fight like the top 10. Like, he fought guys who are good, but not like the elite of like light heavyweight. Like for example, like at the time, someone like Rashad Evans, or Shogun, or any one of these guys. Like, so he went up and challenged the champion straight. Like it's only in this generation of champ, like the guys are able to do this. Like
the super fights, the big.
The big. I mean, we didn't have this.
For the longest time, Dana didn't want any super fights. No? Do you remember?
Longest, it's so like, no. Then the stripper money started coming in. Like they got super fights. It is. No, we don't have super fights. We'll have an extra belt. We call it the baddest motherfucker belt also. Like, how about that? Like, we just make up a belt. Like, fuck it. Like, like just any random belt.
Yeah, but like it's a whole generation thing, man. I mean, like there wasn't so much of hype and internet and trash talk behind it back then either, man. Now, like it's crazy. But
also, I think back in the day, Dana wanted to keep it extremely pure. Dana was very strict about, all these. He didn't want it to be a circus. He wanted to really like for the hardcore fight fans. I think once that sale went through, I think that everything has changed. Like this is about viewers and numbers.
To be really honest, $4 billion will change anybody's outlook on anything.
I mean, you give me that investment, and they are, man. They're making good fucking.
Yeah, dude, you give me $4 billion, I'll tell you that, like, women are fit to rule the planet tomorrow. Like, I'll change my opinions completely. Like, $4 billion, yeah. Like, I'll also want to see some corner fights, like Floyd Mayweather shit. Like, and not just that. It's also the sale of the UFC really is not just like the company that bought it is in kind of debt of $4 billion. So they have to kind of pay that money back. So they have to have the biggest fights, the fights that make the most amount of money. So it's only logical that they will go with these kind of routes. And I don't know, Izzy versus Marvin isn't the money-making fight that, it
Yeah,
is.
that's why they have a second title fight. That's why they stacked this
Yes.
card.
We want to get to that.
So just before we move on to that one, let's have your predictions on it. Sid, who do you think?
Yeah, Izzy finishes him in round number 4. Stops him.
Andrew, how do you see it going?
I would say round 2 to 3. Round 3 maybe TKO. TKO.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll go with round 2 just for just for fun. But I'm basing my whole thing off how Chael Sonnen kind of laid out the game plan for Anderson Silva the first time they fought. When Anderson submitted Chael in just the end of the fight at the end of round 5, and then when they fought again, Anderson finishes him in the second.
Yeah.
So that's how I think this is going to go down. He's going to finish him in the second, TKO him. So we should move on to the next one, which is another rematch: Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno, the baby-faced assassin. Killer fight. Both these guys look very, very well-rounded, man, in their last fight.
Very good fight. And considering the fact that it was a short notice fight for Moreno, he came out and really looked good, yeah.
Even it was short notice for Davison actually as well. Apparently, not apparently, it is the shortest turnaround time for a UFC champion in history. 21 days.
Wow.
Yeah, so Daniel Cormier was talking about this. He's like, in 21 days, I don't care who you are, like turning around a fight camp in 21 days is hell. It's absolute hell. It's a nightmare. And this guy did it. He was hospitalized and then came and fought,
So Moreno looking to be the first true Mexican champion, born and raised, training out of Tijuana, Mexico.
That's very surprising, no? Because considering how big the fight culture is in Mexico, and Mexico is not really that far from the US. I would have expected like a lot more Mexican champions born and brought up. So I was quite surprised to find that he's the first guy who's essentially there.
Who's challenging for the title. Yeah, I mean, Yair is there, of course, Yair Rodriguez, but there are not too many of them out there, man. I think they love their boxing a little more.
Yeah, I think they're more boxing oriented.
Like straight up in Mexico, training out of Mexico. And I guess most of the Mexicans, then when they are at a high level like the UFC, they just move to the States, and train.
But it's a cracking fight.
Yeah. It's Davison Figueiredo is like he's basically the champion that Demetrius Johnson never was, right? The shit talking, cocky like finisher. Like he was smash guys, man. Like I mean,
it's still the most understated division in the UFC, man.
Yeah. Flyweights have to be able to do everything. You have to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You have to be like the best striker. You have to be the best wrestler. Otherwise, like guys, superb cardio. Like you have to have it all. Like otherwise, you are going to get beaten up by a lot of these flyweight dudes. Demetrius Johnson was very ahead of his time when he was around, but I think a lot of these guys are catching up to him as well. Brandon Moreno is like no joke, man. Like the only time I've ever seen him finished was in a TUF fight. He got finished by Alexander Pantoja, rear naked choked in the first round. So but then his pro MMA career, he's never been stopped. And he fought a guy in Davison who stops everybody. I mean, what he did to Joseph Benavidez should be illegal in most countries. I mean, shit. So we literally, like Megan O'Leary witnessed her husband's murder on screen twice. Like, I mean, they killed him, resurrected him, and then killed him again. I mean, Jesus, dude. Like,
I think they really were pushing for him to be champion, and like deservedly so. I mean, he was
exactly
in the division.
I really feel bad for Joseph Benavidez. Like, I mean, the guy was second best when it was Tom Cruise's division. Then he was second best when it was DJ's division. And then now he just gets waxed by Davison Figueiredo. And he's actually a very good fighter, dude. Like, Joseph Benavidez is one of those guys. Like, I talk with a few of my MMA friends and all that he's one of those, like, best fighters to never win a title kinds, like, those conversations. Like, you'll have guys like Kenny Florian. Joseph Benavidez is up there with all of them. One of the best fighters to never win a title. And Davison Figueiredo like ended his career, man, and then fought Brandon Moreno to a draw. But again, let's get real. Like if that point wasn't taken away from like Figueiredo literally kicking him in the balls, he would have won that fight. He would have won it with unanimous decision, So it is what it is.
It was a very close fight. I don't know about
It was very close fight.
decision, but yeah, I mean, and that
Figueredo
also
hurt as well.
it kind of takes the wind out of you being kicked in the nuts like that. And
No, you do, right? Like, I mean, you
Come
get
back
kicked
from
in the
that.
nuts, like your breathing and all of that is disrupted. Like, I would assume, like, even in jiu-jitsu, coach, like, you know this. When you're rolling and you get, like, someone knees you if you're not wearing a cup. Like, I'm religious about wearing a cup during rolling. So when you're not wearing a cup and someone just puts their knee up and you ram into them with your groin, it's unbelievably painful. Anyone who's ever experienced any kind of combat injury towards the groin, like, you know how painful it is. So and it takes away all your energy, all your will to fight. So like for him to come back and still, like, I think almost snatch that round, Brandon Moreno is a real one. Huh?
Yeah, it could, and also he hurt Figueiredo many times. You know, he hurt him a lot, and really fast hands. You know, I was really impressed with like Moreno's hands, how fast his hands were. So, and also I think we can't, you know, obviously the champ is the champ for a reason. But now they've fought each other. You know, they put hands on each other. So now the interesting thing is, like, what have they learned? You know, what have they worked on? What have they realized about each other? Like, if you looked at the countdown show, again, Moreno was talking about, you know, how everyone said that the champion's hands, like, he would knock out everybody, he had so much power. But Moreno was saying, I was fine. Like, he was strong, he hit hard, but I survived. Like, I survived. So that will give him some confidence as well going into this. Because as a challenger, if you've never challenged for the title, the nerves, you know, you don't know if you are at that level or not. Now he's lasted, like, he survived like an entire fight. So I'm sure it's given him a lot of confidence going in.
Yeah, it's going to be a banger of a fight. This for sure is flyweight. Generally, you get really good, like, high-level technical fights. So rest assured that this is
it goes the distance again.
Oof.
Yeah, I'll say it goes the distance again. Brandon Moreno is really tough to finish, and I don't think Deiveson Figueiredo is going to be finished either. So, but who knows? You never know. I would put money on a decision. I'd say Deiveson takes it close, but I think Figueiredo takes it.
Yeah, Deiveson, the champion, retains, unfortunately, 5 rounds. I would really want Moreno to win. And it feels like, if you look at the countdown show, there's a lot more light on the challenger.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just seemed like they want him to win. I don't know why. But it just seemed like there's a lot more focus on the challenger than on the champion. So I think UFC would probably want Moreno to win, but I think champion retains in this one.
Okay, I'll go with Moreno. Just to have the true Mexican champion, the only true Mexican champion in the UFC.
True,
after the first Indian champion, you need to have a Mexican champion.
First Indian champion, yes, the first real Indian champion. Yeah. So, like, I'm telling you, only have Brandon Moreno, like, true Corazon, like Mexican, you know. The guy does Mexican commentary for Spanish commentary for the UFC as well. So I would assume that they want him to win, and I mean, it would be a great, like, you know, fairy tale story for him as well. So
do they buy pay-per-view in Mexico? I can understand why they want him to win if they do.
Not sure.
All right, so
they probably just caliente that shit, like, you know, stream it from the fucking wires straight, like, knowing Mexico, right? Shoot a line of cocaine up an electric pole, like, to get a signal, like, these dudes.
Place like a giant antenna, face it towards New Mexico and get it from there.
Yeah, just get it from there, like live trading footage from New Mexico.
All right, so you have a predictions for that fight. Now coming to the return of Nate Diaz, coming back after how many? 2 years? 3 years? 2 years.
Yeah, after the BMF fight, yeah, 2009.
Yeah, 2 years. 2 years, yeah.
2 years, yeah, man. So Nate Diaz faces Leon Edwards. Now, I mean, the UFC has been looking for somebody to, you know, take that British mantle, you know, to be that British superstar since, you know, Bisping, and they tried a bit with
Hardy as well.
Darren Till.
Darren Till, yeah, they tried to hype Darren Till quite a bit. And yeah, Darren Till got the hype because he's a big talker, but Leon Edwards seems like
he seems
that kind of spoken, and you know,
he doesn't talk too much.
Talker. So I don't know. I mean, that's why maybe he's had some pretty good fights, but the UFC has not pushed him to that championship level. You know.
No, it's also like, to be really honest, it's not like, it's not really the UFC's fault as well. So right before he was supposed, like right before Colby fought Tyron Woodley, right, and had that fantastic performance, beating the shit out of him and stopping him, That was Leon Edwards' fight.
Yeah, it was
They
good.
were, yeah, they were going to England in the O2 to do it, and then the kung flu hit, and spinning kicked all of us back to the Middle Ages, and he lost that opportunity as well. And then the next one, he was supposed to fight Hamza Chimaev, booked, everything was set, everything was ready to go, and then Hamza Chimaev gets COVID.
Yeah.
Like, what is the guy supposed to do? And then he got booked against Bilal Muhammad, fought him, and then I booked him, and then had a no contest. Like, what do you do? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's been a hard road for him. Yeah, now he's got a big name.
He's got a huge name. Like,
yeah, man, I'm a big Nate Diaz fan. I was deciding whether to wear my 209 T-shirt, but then I decided to go with the Stylebender. So yeah, man, I'm a bit scared for my
Yes.
Diaz, man. He's got a tough fight ahead, and he's back after such a long break, man. I don't know how he's gonna be, but he's that fucking warrior, man. He's gonna fucking fight it out. And I mean, who was the last guy to really finish him, man? It was a long time ago, man.
Josh Thompson
head kicked him, man. When was that?
Yeah.
2014, 15, some shit.
Yeah, 2015. Yeah.
And he was ready to, and he was ready to go against Masvidal also. That was a doctor stoppage, but he would have gone on fighting, man. So it's hard to finish, but I don't see him outpointing Edwards.
Leon Edwards, hell no. Leon Edwards is the king of outpointing you in decisions. The guy is another thing a lot of people don't talk about as well. If you look at the Diaz brothers, right? Look at the forehead of the Diaz brothers. It looks like someone took a pen and went like that. Like, it's all cut up. All of it is cut up. All of this is cut up. So anytime they get even remotely like banged by any hard surface, like an elbow or a knee, like, it opens up bad cuts on their faces. And what does Leon Edwards do better than anybody in UFC? Blast you with elbows from the clinch. Like, as soon as you see what he does, is he's really good at this stuff. I've watched all of his fights as well. I went back on Fight Pass and I just went through his entire history. He wasn't always like this, but he has this really neat trick of anytime. So say you're a combination puncher, right? You'll throw 2 to 3 punches to sort of, and usually the third one is the one that has the most pop to it. So what he does is, as soon as you throw the first punch, he ducks and he crashes into you and gets you in a clinch. And he lets you have the underhook, right, on one side. So what he does is he clamps the underhook down using like a whizzer, and using the other hand, he elbows you on the brick. Really smart, really small tactical things that he does really well. And his strengths play exactly into Nate Diaz's weaknesses. If I had to say, I think Leon Edwards is going to beat the living shit out of Nate Diaz. Like, it's going to be really bad. And I'm a huge Nate Diaz fan. I love that, like, surprise, motherfucker. Like, I love that shit. That straight up from the streets attitude, right? Just like, no, fuck you. Like, we're not going to be friends. Like, I don't care. Like, like if you and me are fighting, like, I hate you. I love that attitude that a lot of guys don't have. Like, the Diaz brothers are fighters. They're not martial artists. But Leon Edwards is a fighter as well. He's going to fuck Diaz up. Like, I don't see how Diaz wins this match.
So Diaz, I think, has
maybe cardio.
Yeah,
maybe.
So cardio,
that's the thing. No, it's a 3-round fight. I mean,
it's a 5-round fight.
It's a 5-round fight.
Oh, it's a 5-round fight.
It's the first
ever
non-title. Yeah,
non-title, non-main event
5-round fight.
And well, coming to the point of cardio, Nate Diaz just finished a triathlon last weekend. He just did a triathlon. So he is extremely, like, he's always doing, he does a triathlon on a weekend, just does a full triathlon. So the cardio is never going to be an issue. It's never been an issue. The few things about that camp, the Diaz brothers and all those guys, they actually do very little wrestling. They do absolutely zero wrestling. It's all jiu-jitsu and striking. And they say that, and they talk about it. They talk about, we don't need to wrestle. We do jiu-jitsu. We don't need to wrestle. All we do is jiu-jitsu while standing up. We do jiu-jitsu. And on the ground, we do jiu-jitsu. So they don't need it.
And then, which is really surprising that they have one of the best MMA wrestlers in their camp, Jake Shields.
Exactly. And because it's the transitions, the transition means, when they're getting taken down, almost always they are able to get their opponent in close guard. And that's sort of why they got all those cuts, because they are one of the few people still in modern MMA who are okay to fight from close guard. You know,
Yeah.
Nobody wants to play, man. No, everybody wants to stand back up. But the Diaz brothers are so cool, close guard. You know, they'll play and they take pride in pulling guard. You know,
Yeah.
pride. They Kron Gracie as well, same camp.
Yeah.
They're okay. They're very and a lot of the times what happens with that style is elbows. You get hit with the elbows. You get cut. There's blood, and that affects how the fight is seen, and it's also you're eating damage. So while in 2014, 2015, you could very easily submit people, like these guys could tap people from close guard. Now though, like it's even though he's not Leon Edwards is not a black belt, he's a purple belt, but that purple belt in close guard is going to do a lot of damage. But at the same time, I think it's the only place where Nate Diaz can win. He can only win inside the close guard at the bottom. Locks in maybe an armbar, maybe a triangle. That's the only way he can win. Standing up, he gets smashed. He gets taken down. The only chance, only hope he has, Nate Diaz, is to catch him in a submission on the ground.
I would like to see him outbox him like he did Michael Johnson, but
not gonna happen.
Leon Edwards, the minute I'm like, dude, to watch Leon Edwards fight, the minute, and this is against combination punchers, guys who throw more than 3 strikes, right? Guys who throw a lot of strikes against him. The minute the first one will come, by the time the second one is coming, he's already shooting and ducking into you. He doesn't wait for you to like finish combos and do all this like fancy blocking and fuck that. No, like I'm not even going to let you hit me. Just dive into you, crash into you. And sometimes it results in headbutts and things like that as well. But it really gives him the advantage of guys having scared, or like not just scared, but mentally little hesitant on throwing combination shots. If you really think about it, his only loss in the UFC has been to Kamaru Usman.
Yeah.
And Kamaru Usman's an animal. Like that guy is just difficult to move. So Leon had a really tough time against him. And even then, put up a really good fight. So I think, I don't see how Nate Diaz wins this. I don't see, even from the bottom, I don't see him winning it. Like Gunnar Nelson couldn't submit him, and Gunnar Nelson is legit ADCC black belt, held his own against Damian Maia on the ground.
Yeah.
He couldn't submit him. He couldn't even do much against, he mounted Leon Edwards towards the end, but I don't know if Nate is able to do that kind of consistent damage over, someone bigger, stronger than him. Like Leon Edwards is 6'1". He's not a small welterweight. Like he cannot make lightweight even if he wanted.
But does he have a reach advantage on Diaz? Because Diaz is pretty lanky.
Yeah,
Diaz
has the reach advantage.
Yeah, Diaz will probably have a reach advantage. But another thing is to keep in mind is that they're both southpaws.
Yeah.
So inside leg kick is going to be there every day, all day.
And Leon's a good kicker, man.
He's going to be there. Leg kick, body kick is going to be there day in, day out. So I really don't see how Nate Diaz wins this fight. I'll be very happy for him if he does. And I'm crazy because.
But why does Nate Diaz take these fights, man? He takes these fights which nobody else wants to take. Nobody wanted to fight Masvidal. Nobody wanted to fight Leon Edwards.
No, but this is what makes the Diazes the Diazes. This is what makes the Diazes the Diazes. They're like, oh, you don't want to fight him? Fuck you, I'll fight him.
Yeah. Ever since the 2 corner fights, it's not really a money thing for.
It's not a money thing
anymore. And he's like, fuck that shit. I know he's got a whole bunch of medical marijuana sponsorships going for him, and that's why he can sit out for 2 years at a go, and then
Yeah, just appearances he can charge, man, thousands of dollars. Like that dude, he's one of their true stars who's never even been a champion. Nate Diaz I don't think he's ever really fought for a belt.
BMF.
Yeah. BMF fell, but title fight, I don't think he's ever fought for a title in the UFC. Yeah, he's not even a title fight. Never even been in a title fight. One of the biggest stars in the UFC. Crazy. Yeah. Crazy what beating Conor McGregor will do for your career, huh?
Also tough 5.
Tough 5, yeah. Tough 5. I remember he beat Manny Gamburian by shoulder injury in the end. Yeah, I remember that. And him getting into the whole argument with Karo Parisian.
Yeah.
That was really funny, old school MMA, new school MMA, clashing.
So how do you guys see it going down, man? I mean, I gotta go with I gotta go with Nate, of course.
Represent the 209.
I'd love to see him outbox him, rock him, and then finish with like a choke or something.
Oh damn!
Yeah. How you seeing it?
Unfortunately, I think he'll get stopped, man. Cut.
Yeah.
He'll get a cut. I think third or fourth round. I think it's not
Yeah.
It's not going 5 rounds.
Yeah, it's not going for Leon Edwards. Probably cuts him up in 2 or 3. 2 or 3 max, I think. If it goes 4 or 5, I would give Nate a much better shot at winning. Much better shot.
But
at
again,
winning.
like you said, he gets cut really fast, so that
Yeah.
then the doctor
Really
stoppage
fast.
comes in.
Because if you've noticed, like he's had 3 scheduled 5-round fights. Oh, Benson Henderson? No, yeah, no. Yes, Benson Henderson. He fought Benson Henderson, Connor, and
Didn't he fight Benson Anderson for the championship? I think wasn't that a championship fight? Anyway, we'll check back on that. But maybe it
yeah,
was.
exactly. It might be. You might be right. You might be right. It might have been a title fight. It might have. You might be right. Let me just check. I have his record open right here. Yeah, Nate Diaz at the 209. Yes, he was a lightweight challenger. Yes, my mistake. He did fight Benson Henderson for the lightweight championship. Yes, and then in the very next fight, Josh Thompson kicked his head off.
Yeah, I remember
That was
that fight. I remember the end of that fight. Like Nate Diaz had Benson Henderson in a leg lock at the end of the fight, and he couldn't finish it, and he kept
Yeah.
double finger
Yeah,
on the leg
trying
lock.
to slap Benson Henderson. Like he's a good fighter. Just I think he's older now, and taking.
Yeah, he
too
should be
much
taking
damage.
them old man fights. Maybe he should box. What's his fucking face? One of these. YouTubers.
Exactly. Logan Paul should be calling out Nate or Nick Diaz. Can you imagine the pain those guys would inflict on Logan Paul?
If he took Nate Diaz's cap, he's not reaching home, bro.
Yeah, he's not reaching home. Dude, the violence is breaking out in the
Shot
parking
on the
lot.
way to oh, God.
Yeah, exactly. He gets shot up.
Like like Gilbert Melendez will jump out of some fucking hood somewhere, some Mexican hood somewhere and assault you.
Oh yeah. I mean, this guy didn't really get assaulted, man. They were just trying to, snatch Floyd's bodyguards was just trying to snatch his cap back. But if you
Yeah.
remember what that fucking shit went down at the Bellator cage, when who's that red-haired guy, man? Like he was challenging Jake Shields.
No,
like,
you're talking about Strikeforce Nashville.
Strikeforce,
Yes, I remember that card
And
very
Nick
well.
Diaz comes and really fucking smacks him right there on live TV. He's like, fuck.
Yeah, and then you can hear Gus Johnson in the back. Gentlemen, this is not how we do things. Sometimes these things happen in MMA. No, Gus, these things do not happen in MMA.
Yeah.
It was the first time Strikeforce was being broadcast on national TV on NBC. Like families and shit are sitting at home watching Nick Diaz bubble Jason Miller like in the cage.
Jason Mayhem Miller. Yeah, man.
Yeah, Nate and Nick both jump in. Gilbert also jumps in. Like, I mean, they're all pummeling him. And that's the funniest one. Gentlemen, this is not how we do things here. Like these bunch of fighters from NorCal are going to listen to you. But yeah, the Diaz brothers, that's what endears them to people, right? They have that fuck you spirit.
And it's a team. It's always a team.
Yeah, it's always a team.
Rather than moving to war.
No, and even their shit talk is also really funny. Like, it's really like blunt, right? Like, the touch button in the park. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, it's so witty, but it's so like, hood at the same time. Like, Connor's there, like, talking about how, your gang signs in one hand and balloon animals on the other. And
Connor was like so, felt so scripted, and this guy felt so spontaneous.
Yeah. No, Connor is not scripted. He's from the UK, right? Like the way this is their humor. It's very like sort of dry and, very witty, and not everybody gets it and things like that. Touch button in the park, everybody understands.
It's some West Coast gangster shit.
Everybody understands touch button in the park. Mom, it's like this is Nate Diaz's argument. This is how he argues with people. Fuck you. My gang will kick your gang's ass. Yeah. That's how it goes. Like with Nate Diaz.
And I think mindset. It's the mindset, bro. Like
it's the brain.
They showed the Unplugged, no? Unplugged, what is it called? Unplugged is called, no?
Embedded.
Yes, Uncaged is famous. It remembers Uncaged. Okay.
Yeah, so Embedded, they showed the Diaz, the Diaz reached the hotel, and they reached Arizona, right? That's where they fight. And it's fucking hot. They reach there and they're like, it's damn hot. there's a mountain there. Good, awesome. Because now we can run, we can climb that mountain now. That's what his head was. Head is that logo. There's a mountain. It's hot. It's not what we're used to. Let's go climb that mountain. Let's run. Let's climb that mountain. And again, if you look at Edwards, he's coming in from the UK. It's a much nicer weather. It's pleasant. And now they're fighting in a fucking, hot, heated conditions.
So fighting in basically what we're living in Delhi.
We're living in here. So will that play a factor? I don't know. But if it does, like 4th, 5th round, you have to go with Diaz for that one.
I would say if it's the later rounds, I would say Diaz takes it. If it's the earlier rounds, Dion cuts him up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's hope it's not a doctor's stoppage. Let's hope it actually plays out the way it is.
Yeah, seriously, fingers crossed. I can't handle another Diaz doctor stoppage fight. No, please. Like the message boards go crazy after that for months, man.
All right. Then we got 2 more fights on the main card. We got Damian Maia coming back against Bilal Muhammad. Bilal was the last guy that fought. Ended with a eye poke. And he gets to come back against a 44-year-old jiu-jitsu legend in Damian Maia, man. How do you think this guy goes down?
Yeah, I think I'm excited about this fight, believe it or not.
Same here.
The only way they can fuck this up if both of them keep it striking. If it becomes 2 of these...
A kickboxing match.
Yeah, if they keep it a kickboxing match, I'm going to go to sleep, for sure. But if they start grappling, which is both of their strength, I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight. You've got Bilal, who's an absolutely amazing wrestler.
Yeah, good top grappler.
Fucking amazing wrestler. The way he takes people down at will, the way he transitions from single leg to double leg, back to single leg to, takes the back. It's amazing. And then you've got Damian Maia, who's like the granddaddy the granddaddy of jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu maestros in MMA. Old, okay, given, he's very old now. But at the same time, I want to see this fight. I want to see them grapple. I want to see them grapple for 3 rounds. I want to see how a top-notch wrestler with good ground, understanding and jiu-jitsu goes up against the best MMA jiu-jitsu guy, I think, who's ever been in the UFC. So I'm absolutely thrilled to see this fight. I don't want to see them standing up and striking at all. I don't want to see Damian Maia, Anderson Silva, stuff like that. I don't want to see stuff like that ever again.
Come on, that was awesome.
I don't want to watch that.
It's great. That was awesome.
Damian Maia's last fight was in March 2020, which he lost against Burns.
Gilbert Burns.
Yeah.
Gilbert, yes. Gilbert hit him with a check right hook. Was it?
Yeah.
Check right hook, check left hook. Check left hook and just laid his lights out, man.
But he won his previous 3 years.
Yeah. If he had beaten Gilbert, he would have challenged for a title again.
Yeah.
That's how good Damian Maia is. I think Bilal Muhammad is a very good top grappler, very good wrestler, good top pressure, good passing, good submissions. If he takes it to the ground, he makes the mistake of taking it to the ground. Damian Maia is going to tie him up like a pretzel, like a jalebi, and squeeze the shit out of him. I don't see him being able to keep Damian Maia off his back. Black belts have gotten their souls taken from them by Damian Maia.
No, but Andrew, then you think about it. Bilal's entire game is, tiring the opponent down, taking him down, making him stand up, striking, taking him down. Now, what happens when he's scared?
The guy doesn't want to stand up anymore. Yeah, just take him down. He's there. The first being there.
Now, if you think about it, if Bilal doesn't want to go to the ground with Maia, he'll stand up with him. Yeah. Maia can't take Bilal to the ground.
You know what, Coach? I think he can. And I don't think he needs to take it to the ground. I think he needs to get him one single leg, pull half guard. That's it. That's exactly what he did to Ben Askren.
Or tie him up against the cage and then try to...
Yeah, and tie him up against the cage, single leg, straight, pull half guard. What Palhara is and... Exactly what he pulls guard into the leg entanglement. Uses the leg entanglement to take your back. Dude, that Damian Maia is the greatest MMA grappler I have ever seen. I've never seen a guy as grappling in MMA like that, dude. High level wrestlers get fucked up by him on the ground, man. Get swept and shit. They were Ben Askren could not do anything to him on the ground. Nothing. Ben Askren is a guy that held down Douglas Lima, held down so many other fantastic fighters. Damon Maia just refused to be held down. One fucking butterfly hook, sweep, straight into mount.
Yeah.
Pass, slice through his guard. Like, I mean, Ben Askren didn't know what he was doing, man. He was getting just worked on the ground. And I think Bilal Muhammad, if he's smart, will essentially try to keep it on the feet, because if he takes it to the ground, I don't see him getting out of this.
Which
Any
is
other
where,
thing that they submitted.
which is where it goes from a really exciting fight to an extremely boring fight. If they both keep it standing, it's going to be a snooze fest.
Yeah, no, I don't think Damian Maia is going to even try to keep it standing. He's going to immediately shoot to try to take him down. What he did with Carlos Condit, remember?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, fuck this. Boom, straight double leg, took his back, jumped onto his back, choked him out in less than 2 minutes. He's like, yeah, done. Submission of the night, $50,000. Let's go home to Brazil.
And every time he's done that, he's succeeded, man. Every time he's just shot blindly. He fought Chael also like that. No, Chael also like quick ground.
No. Chael, it was one of the most beautiful sequences in MMA I've ever seen. He bounced Chael off the cage and hit him with a lateral drop. Hit him with a lateral drop and then transitioned from that lateral drop into a mounted triangle. I mean, I was just like, when I saw it, I was like, what is this? Like, hit him with a lateral drop with like overhooks on him. Hit him with a beautiful lateral drop. It's played in highlights all the time, like, because it's one of the most beautiful moves I've ever seen performed there.
I think Damian Maia's most evil submission that I remember is the one he did against Rick Story.
Yeah, the nosebleed one, no?
Yeah, man, when blood just gushed out of his nose.
It wasn't even this. It wasn't even this.
It was the neck crack.
Yeah, it was just everything's just like compressed. Like, which is why I have incredible respect for someone like Masvidal, who took Damian Maia to the distance and he wasn't even close to being submitted.
Yeah.
And then in a lot of interviews that you read after that, Damian Maia says, he's like, in all my entire MMA career, the most difficult guy to even submit or get to the back was Jorge Masvidal.
So I guess all three of us are going with Maia.
I would pick Maia. I'd pick Maia by submission. Rear naked choke, first round.
All right.
Or if it drags on later, like Matt Brown did, survived a little more, third round.
If they keep it standing, I'll have to go with Bilal. If they keep standing, I think he can rock Maia also.
Yeah, he's got good striking as well. He's not bad. Like, he's
heavy
the
hands.
only time Bilal has ever been finished by strikes is by Vicente Luque.
Yeah.
And that guy.
Bilal again, like really flat-footed, heavy hands. And the reason he does well is he wrestles, gets you tired, then strikes with you, then wrestles. So the opponent gets really tired. So that
like I remember his fight with Lyman Good. That's how he beat him. Like, he sort of like just cycled takedowns and then Lyman Good is fantastic as well. Didn't take too much damage, but then in the third round really hurt him. So I would pick Maia by submission, but if it stays on the feet, Bilal all day.
Bilal takes it.
All right. So the last fight that we'll go through, or the first fight that we'll see on TV that day, will be Paul Craig versus Jamal Hill. What are your thoughts on this one, guys?
Like, I've watched most of Jamal Hill's fights in the UFC, and he's going to beat the shit out of Paul Craig.
Is Jamal Hill from one of these Dana White Contender Series or something?
Yeah, I think he's on from Contender. Contender Series. I think he's one of those dudes.
He beat OSP last.
Yeah, he knocked him out last fight. Yeah, so very good striking, very fundamentally sound. Paul Craig, though, for a guy who looks like he should be like, straight up like meat and potatoes, is the most like weird light heavyweight I've seen, because he like shoot for a single leg, pull guard. Like for light heavyweight, like it's very weird to see a light heavyweight pull guard and then submit guys on the bottom. He submitted that dude, that killer, scary dude, Magomed Ankalaev.
Yeah.
He submitted that dude.
Last fight. Last fight.
No. That was Ankalaev's first fight in the UFC, but it was the last minute of the last round he tapped him. 4:59 and he tapped. And Ankalaev has just gone on to like literally have almost all stoppages in his record, like, and higher and more vicious competition. Whereas Paul Craig has fought. You know who Paul Craig beat?
He beat Shogun also, no?
He beat Shogun as well. He beat the shit out of Shogun. And he also beat this guy. What's the guy who beat Izzy's teammate last time? Carlos Ulberg.
Oh, yeah.
Kennedy Nzechukwu. He beat him as well. Same thing. Grabbed his hand, pulled him into guard and got him in a triangle. Like, I mean, the guy is really like, he's an anomaly. So again, This is one of those fights. If it's on the feet, Jamal Hill is going to smash him. But if it gets to the ground, I give Paul Craig much better chance.
So Paul Craig is a brown belt,
Yeah,
while Jamal is a blue belt. So
exactly. That's what I mean. You know, so
that's where it gets interesting.
That's why the ground gets interesting. But yeah, like you said, on the feet,
Jamal is
Jamal's
very
got
good.
like a much higher strike rate,
And he hits with power, right? Like, so he hits you like guys get put away. And Paul Craig has been susceptible to that kind of like power.
all right. So who are you going for on this one?
Jamal Hill wins there. I think he
Yeah,
wins.
I'd say first round KO TKO.
Yeah.
Second round.
All right. Yeah, I say he carries on his undefeated record and gets his knockout in the first or the second. Okay. Are we talking about anything else? There goes.
I mean, odds and ends, I would say that one more fight, the Brad Riddell Drew Dober fight. I think that's a good banger. That should have been a good replacement for the Paul Craig fight. But I guess I know why they put it on the prelims. That people watch the fucking prelims. That's a really good fight. The prelims have two good fights and then one chick fight. But really, like when the girl fight comes along, when women start fighting, I tune out. I'm just like, I can't watch this like low level shit. I mean, for real.
Just like all the women to be combined in one weight division, then it'll become
Open weight.
Yeah, like seriously, have one open weight division and move it to Invicta. Like just move everything to Invicta. Like no need for all of this. Just stop polluting the product. Stop polluting high level MMA with low level like regional MMA shit that you could see in like, you know, any XFL show or, you know, like come on, man. If the head and arm throw is still viable in your strategy, that means you are not fighting correctly. Yes, I'm sure they're like very high level, like Valentina and Joanna and all. But for most part, like you like any Jessica I fight, any like Betch Correia fight, come on, dude. It's a crime against humanity. It's like that they put these fights in the main card.
You know, we're not going to put any of this now. I hope more women watch our show to hate on us, but
No women watches the show.
no.
No chicks watch this show. Like, I mean, I'd be surprised if a girl watches this show. Like even in MMA, like I'm surprised that there are women who actually care about. There are few here and there, but 99.9% of viewership is male. Like very clearly male.
Yeah.
Like I tried getting my girlfriend to watch it. She's like, I can't watch this. It's just too much violence. Like this. I made her watch Rory and Robbie Lawler too. I can't deal with this.
I had to introduce her to fucking MMA. Hey, watch this. Like real violence happening.
Yeah, just like the most violent thing ever.
Blair, you know, like the old Anderson. Like
yeah, I mean, sure, Izzy fighting something. No, I was like, no, let's go with the fight where like a guy's lip is busted open, the other guy's lip from first round to round 5, like his face changes every round. Like he's a different person every round. Like by the time he gets to 5th round, I was like, that's not Rory McDonald, dude. Like I'm pretty sure that's not him. Like the imposter must have taken his, place because his eye. He was like breathing blood, like. And then the craziest thing is after the fight is like, sending like, message like, I live for shit like this. I was like, bro, I'm not tough enough for all this, man. Like I really am not. I'd be crying, like when they're calling for my mom and shit. Like, at that point. And here's Robbie Lawler, like,
have you guys been watching this Paige Van Zandt super fight that's coming?
The bare knuckle one, hell no.
Yeah, all these chicks are moving out to bare knuckle fighting shit, man. Yeah, she's got Rachel Ostrovich.
Yeah, who she beat in the UFC.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
why
did you see her tweet about like the fight?
Yeah, she said, come watch.
Come for the movies.
Come for the movies.
Stay for the violence or some shit like that.
Love that.
This is why I find MMA sometimes I find it really weird. Dude, Paige Van Zandt is not pretty. Like, I don't know from which world people think that she's pretty. Like, have you seen high fashion modeling or any of these models? Like, no, she's not pretty, dude. Like, even in like fucking athletics, she's not pretty. The people like drowning over her. Like, no.
That's just a subjective thing, bro. I don't
True,
think
I agree, but like,
is too pretty either.
Yeah, Rachel Ostrovich is not very pretty. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, it's just that she's built a little differently. Like. But the only, as I said, the only other fight I really care about in this is the Brad Riddell fight. I think that's is his teammate, no?
Yeah.
I think he also coaches Tiger, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't he coach? Like, he's one of the coaches at Tiger Muay Thai, right?
Another is.
Oh, I thought Tiger Shroff.
Because I know Brad also trains striking there. He's a striking coach.
Brad's a killer.
Yeah, he's a killer. Yeah,
And
Brad's
the
a
entire
real-
camp, like that's what I said, the entire camp is such that they actively work on being taken. So they start the
from
round
back positions. Yeah,
from being taken, like your one hip is on the floor and the guy's got double leg. Now work up 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Go. So they do 5-minute rounds like that.
because I remember Brad Riddell fighting. Like, I mean, he fought that guy Mustafaev.
Yeah.
The dude that spinning back kicked Rafael Fiziev.
Yeah.
And he took the guy, he gave him a hard first round, but Brad Riddell cardio, really good cardio, tough. Like warrior spirit, came back in the next 2 rounds, just beat the crap out of him. And Drew Dober is like, have you guys seen that meme, the Chad meme? Chad, no, the square jaw on the head and shit. That's Drew Dober, dude. If you look at him, he looks exactly like that.
Chad.
Square jaw, thick, big, like, you know. The only thing is that, like, he has certain weaknesses to very good grapplers. Case in point, Islam Makhachev and Beneil Dariush, superb grapplers who both managed to take him down and submit him.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but I don't think Brad Riddell's going to take him down in submission. These guys are going to bang. Like,
It's going to be striking contest.
Yeah, it's going to be like one of those, right? And this card is actually pretty good. Like, the other fight is that the Hakim Dawodu fight against the unbeaten Russian guy, Mosul Eviov, I think his name is. These Russians are very difficult names to pronounce. But they're wholesale taking over MMA, man. Look at these dudes. Sooner or later, we're going to see like another Russian UFC. Well, technically, we already had one UFC champion.
Yeah.
His name was Peter Yan.
Yeah.
He was the only active Russian champion, right? And then Aljamain Sterling took a knee to the head, like.
Shit, yeah. Who are all the champions? And suddenly I saw Aljamain Sterling, and I'm like, oh yeah, fuck.
I forgot he won that fight.
He was the champion.
Won that fight. Dude, Peter Yan was putting it on him in that fight.
Oh, yeah,
like, just putting it on him. Like, Peter Yan fights
like... Are they scheduled at all? In the future?
No, like,
he's not coming back from his fucking surgery, is he?
No, Aljamain Sterling, he's being a bitch about it. No, he's like, fuck you, I'll fight you, Henry Cejudo, I'll fight you, this guy, Peter. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like a rematch with me left. And he's putting up memes right now, like when the Oscars came. Did you see that? When the Oscars came?
Damn funny shit, yeah, man.
You put the Aljamain best actor with Aljamain Sterling holding I was like, dude, whoever runs Peter Yan's social media is a savant. Like, the guy just knows what to say, when to say it. Like, even his trash talk, shut your mouth, I'll slap you. Like, just like straight, no, extra bullshit. These Russians, dude, I tell you, like, there's something else, man. Don't fuck around. Like,
all right.
Guys.
So that's our predictions for the UFC 263 fight card on Sunday at 7:30 on Sony Live and Sony 10, 2 and 3. You guys can watch it. Let us know in the comments what your predictions are, and we'll be back, breaking down these fights once they happen sometime next week. So this is it for us. My name is Von Saxena, Siddharth Singh, and Andrew Liu signing off.
Bye, guys. Take care.